have got in studio a comedian as well as poet in the person of Andrew Manyika. Hello, Andrew, and welcome to Morning Rush.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, this is going to be a mouth-watering conversation because Cecelia, who is an anchor, is a producer, but she's also a poet. So we, of course, will be getting into the teensy-weensys of that. But before we get there, Andrew, let's talk about your inspiration.
Yes.
And how you got to be in poetry, as well as also how you got to be in comedy, given, of course, the background that you're also a degreed candidate from the University of Johannesburg.
Your alma mater as well. Well, the inspiration came really during those days in varsity. You get to experience the social life and see what's happening out there beyond the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I just love stories, man. And the way that they can make you feel, being in them, hearing them, sharing them. There's something special about the way that the human being is wired, so that storytelling is the best way to relay information, to evoke feelings, and that's what just thrills me about it. So that's where the inspiration came from.
Right. You have performed on various platforms from South Africa to Egypt. I don't know whether it would be safe to say from Cape to Cairo, but essentially you have been on some UK platforms, you've been on South African platforms, Egyptian, and several others, of course, including the local ones. Yeah. What has that exposure meant for you?
It's critical. It's critical because you get to see the different approaches that there are to the art forms in the different places. So, for example, when I went to Egypt, you always take for granted the fact that you speak English and it's an advantage because most of the world is English speaking. Then you get to a country where it's a second language at best, and you're asking for directions and someone says, we don't speak that here. So there's that. And then there's South Africa where the slam poetry scene is incredibly vicious, like it's really competitive, and that's where really I honed my craft. So that was helpful, and I brought that experience here with me. So you get to see how people approach putting on shows, the craft of writing, and how they convey their stories, and it brings a different appreciation when you come back and you perform and you incorporate all of that into your work.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Okay, my question is away from the admin and traveling and everything. Yeah. I want to ask about your creative process. Some poets tend to create at the extremes. Either a person is like very, very low, you're depressed, you're down and under, or you're very happy, you're in love. What's your creative process like? What makes you create a piece?
All right, so it can be any number of things, but it really is not always about me as an individual. So what I try to do is, yes, there are some stories that are personal, but also we're just trying to look at the human experience. In my creative process, what I'm always looking for is that angle that connects us. So that whatever I'm performing and wherever you're coming from, you can relate. Either you're going to come out of my performance and think, I've never thought of that before, or that's exactly how I feel. So it's my aim is always just to convey the ideas that we all hold in common. So whether the highs or the lows, but the human experience is encapsulated in all of it.
Right. You've also adjudicated poetry events in Zimbabwe and a couple of international ones. What is your assessment of the state of poetry in this country, and what needs to be done, briefly?
It's burgeoning, it's growing in as much as it is an existing art form, but there has been an evolution of it from, you remember when we were in school and we used to do Netembo, and
yes,
it was a different approach to poetry in the sense that it was very steeped in very deep language, but it was also exclusionary by virtue of that same fact. But then now the slam poetry and the performance poetry scene is growing, and the discussions about contemporary issues using modern language, and that evolution has been very exciting to see. But of course there's room for it to grow and be appreciated as a performance art beyond the very traditional ways that it's been done before, and incorporate more modern approaches to it.
Right. You've got an event lined up this Saturday, which is tomorrow,
that is
at
correct.
the Reps Theatre. Tell us more about that.
All right, so the event is Mind Your Language. It's a comedy and poetry show. It's going to be myself. It's going to be Munya Guramatunu, So Profound, Brian K., and our Wiz, and it's comedy and poetry and music and laughter and all the good things.
It's something that I'd actually want to attend.
Tomorrow, 6 p.m.
I'll be there.
It looks like you just tickled the fancy of Cecelia. And time permitting, would you want to hit us maybe with some one or two poetry lines, Cecelia, Andrew, just before we close the show?
All right, here goes. It's from a poem called Bacon, and it's literally 1 minute long.
Okay, sure.
Bacon, we never knew you. Yours was the sweet save of a Saturday morning. Scintillating scent transcending space and perhaps time. Titillating taste teasing tongue and perhaps mind. Placed on plates while I cleared the palate. Amongst taste buds you had pride of place. My mouth was your palace. Bacon. Thank you. If you want more, you have to come to the show.
That was a good one right there. Well, quite the tease, of course. Andrew Manyika, a comedian as well as poet, joining us on Morning Rush this morning.
Konapo, Ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.